Okay, Heidi, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us today. This is very exciting. We have lots of people today. So as Heidi was saying, this is a webinar organized by the Many Babies Teaching, Training and Open Science Committee, which I have the pleasure of co-chairing with Brianna Macmillan. And we are very excited to be discussing about coding software today. As you might have seen, the webinar will run for approximately 90 minutes, and I'm going to tell you more about the dynamics in a second. But first, why this webinar? Why behavioral coding software? Well, this kind of software allows developmental scientists to analyze streams of behavior in great detail, far beyond the capacities of the human eye, right? And this technology also enables us to measure, describe, and ultimately explain how behavior unfolds of different timescales and across subjects with greater accuracy, which is absolutely central for developmental research. Different pieces of software out there offer various functionalities, and due to limited time, researchers need precise information to choose the software that best meets their needs. So today we are thrilled to have representatives from three software tools that are widely used in developmental science, and we are talking about Boris, Datavyu, and Elan. Each representative will deliver a short presentation of about 15 minutes outlining the key distinctive features of each software and demonstrating its potential for behavioral analysis. And then we will have a short Q&A followed by a final discussion where we will receive comments and questions from everybody. So we also encourage you to participate actively during the presentation. So please use the chat or the Q&A function to ask questions or share your thoughts. And before we begin, I'd like to highlight that all three software tools represented today are free and open source. And this aligns perfectly with the core values of victim science collaborations, such as Many Babies, that are championing open science values and practices. So this is really important for us. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Marco Gamba, who will present about Boris. So Marco, the floor is all yours. Sorry, Marco, I think
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now. Good.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to share my presentation. It's going to come in a second, and then I'll be able to start. So just confirm you're seeing the slide. Yeah.
We are.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nico, for the invitation, and thanks for your patience. As you know, we're always very busy, and then sometimes we lose emails. And I'm very happy to be today with you. I'm going to show you some of the functionalities and a couple of characteristics of the software Olivier and I put together. And I want to start with the fact that everything started in 2010. It was already 7 years that we started our evolution of animal and human behavior master degree at the University of Turin. And at that point, we had enough of paying a lot of money for behavioral coding software. And one of the big issues was that at the time, behavioral coding software cost a lot of money, but also was very much constrained by the characteristics of the different, let's say, computer brands that were allowed or not to use that particular piece of software. And so we wanted to put together something that was ease of use and flexible, and of course, part of an efficient workflow. And this is where we started with when we decided to put Boris together. And Boris, as you may know, is free and open source, as Nick already underlined before, and is available for Microsoft, Linux, Chromebook, and usually also for macOS, even if at the present stage we have some issue with our player, and so which is, of course, part of the open source kind of idea we are working under. And unfortunately, macOS is paused at the moment, but we hope to be back with that as well very soon. And there is also a Boris app that works for Android that can be used, and it is some way in between the alpha and beta version at the present stage. We can also run Boris with Raspberry Pi. Some of you already experienced the use of these small computers. You can try it with Boris. It works very well. And the setting you see over here is a very cheap setting that you can imagine to put on action very easily. So why open source? You know already a lot of things about open source. Nick already mentioned that. I just want to stress that some of the key elements of Boris are very successful open source projects, and this is the idea we wanted to start with, and we want to move on, and this is very important. And what we had in mind when we started putting together Boris was to do something that was suitable for a wide array of species. This happened because I'm a zoologist. I start from a biology background. I work with many different species, studying animal behavior. I also study human behavior, but we really wanted something to be very flexible for all of our students, and then for the community that decided to use Boris in the next years. And just because I know that many of you might be interested in humans, I want to say that the very last publication citing the paper that we published in 2016 are really working on human kind of very human typical behaviors with different settings and different situations. So of course there's a lot of people using Boris even when dealing with human behavior. This is the paper that I'm talking about that was very successful in terms of citations, because it collected more than 1,600 citations until today, and since its publication in 2016. So what is Boris? Boris is an event login software. So we have a keyboard. All of our computers or kind of handheld computers we want to use may have one. And you can associate a particular behavior to a key on your keyboard. It can be animal behavior, as we said, these are gelato baboons, but it can also be human behavior. And what it happens is that when you click the first time that particular key you associated with a particular behavior, your behavior starts in the coding of your media or in the coding of your observation. I will come back to this later on. And then when you press it again, it stops. So Boris is basically something you can use in 3 different situations, and I'll come back to this situation very briefly in a short while. So it can be working with an audio file on a video file you collected previously, you recorded previously, or it can be a live observation. We had students, for example, doing observation on the underground, and so without recording anything, but just looking at people and see the behaviors of the different individuals, for example, using their masks or in other situations. And then you can also use Boris when you have a set of pictures, and I will make an example in a short while. Let me just list Boris' main features over here, then I will come to something more detailed later on. But you can configure an unlimited number of subjects, behaviors, modifiers, and independent variables. You may have an unlimited number of observation, live or from media. You can, of course, base your analysis on VLC and MPV libraries. At this stage, we decided to stock on MPV, and that's the problem with macOS, but maybe we'll come back somewhere else in the future. And you can, as I said before, code in media files of different types, but also at various playback speeds, or even in frame-by-frame mode. For example, for fetch facial expression, we have a lot of colleagues using the frame-by-frame mode. And you can use up to 8 media files synchronously played. And those media files can also be enqueued for playing. For example, in the case you're using systems like camera traps or that are collecting very short videos. Police, for example, is using those crime cameras that are recording only for a short while. You can put all those videos in a long queue and see a lot of them at the same time. And of course, this is something that we are very proud of, and we also use a lot for our own work. All the coded events can be exported as plain text files. And so it's something that can be used then with many different software and many different applications. Using Boris, you can go to 2 very important or 3 very important kind of data viz, and that type of visualization are basically activity budgets, behavioral transitions, and events plot. Activity budget it is what we use a lot in animals, so trying to understand how animals are investing their times in particular behaviors. But we also use a lot of flow diagrams to tell how from a particular behavior you can go to another one, so showing behavioral transition across different states, what is also referred to as finite state machines by many colleagues working in computer science. And within Boris, you can also produce an events plot like this that is useful to see what happens in your coding, but is also very useful to understand whether you did some mistake and you want to go back and change a particular thing in your coding. And something, again, we put a lot of energy into is, as I said before, is making Boris part of our workflow. So whatever is the final scope of your research, or whatever is the software you want to analyze your data with, we've been trying to have the right expert of the coding you've done within Boris, to Beatrix, to Prato, to DeepLabCat, to many different software you can imagine to use, including, of course, R or Python libraries that you might want to use to visualize your data. Of course, there are many things that Boris is not doing, but remember, it's an open source program, so you can try to fork it yourself and change the functions and add what you need. When you want to see resources of Boris, there is a website you can check it out, but there is also a guide. There is a page on GitHub. There is a Mastodon page. We have tutorial videos on YouTube. And you also have, of course, the paper I mentioned before on methods in ecology and evolution. And I want to offer a very quick tour of Boris. And the first thing I wanted to introduce is the project. So when you start using Boris, you will set a project. And the project is something that will include almost anything related to your set of observations. So imagine you start a new project, a new observation set, and you may have the heterogram, the subjects, the independent variables, all within the Boris project. You will also have all your coding stored within the project. What is not stored in the project is the media. So all your media will not be in the project, because sometimes you have a very extensive set of media, and so it will be too much to put into a single file. But what I want to stress is those 3 things can be shared by sharing the project. So, for example, if you want to set up a particular project that will be then shared with all the colleagues in your group, you can imagine to do these 3 things, to prepare them, and then to share the Boris project to others, and the others will inherit immediately all the features that you put in for that particular project. We have a user interface that looks more or less like this, but it may change slightly depending on the type of observation you're doing. So the most common type is the one in which you are working with audio or video recordings, and that is the kind of interface you will have with you. And you remember, you will set up until 8 different cameras synchronously played in your system. And of course, these single cameras can be undocked and also shown across different monitors, sorry, if you want. So there's no need to keep all of them on the same place. But as I said before, there is also a lot of people using Boris for live observations. In that case, you will not see, of course, a media, but you will see time going on. And of course, your observations, your coding will be logged onto the time going on here. And you can also use Boris to code a set of pictures. So in the example I'm showing here, we have colleagues recording animals in the forest using camera traps, and they don't use in the ethogram actual behaviors, but they use speeches, and they use let's say what we use as behaviors to code the presence of a particular species in these camera traps. You can also generate, if you're using a computer that is working with touch, you can also generate buttons that can be touched from your touch screen for the subjects and also for the different behaviors you set in your projects. And with Boris, you can also imagine to have behaviors, connected with a coding map. It can be behaviors or modifiers, actually, that are, of course, those modifiers you want to add to particular behaviors. Let's, for example, imagine I want to have a behavior like play, and I can decide that as a modifier, I want to use play with a ball, or play with a stick, or play with food, or play with a group mate, or whatever I choose to have. And you can have a very different coding maps. This is something that I got from our users. It can be something related to, let's say, a particular situation or a particular object, or again, a zoo enclosure, or people using maps to ensure that they can correctly recognize, for example, facial expression or parts of facial expression, like in this case for horses, or again, inheriting something that was published before and using those particular images to add information as a modifier to behavior that you are seeing from a media while screening a particular video you recorded for the same species. When you're setting ethogram and the behaviors, we have a lot of chances about that, and we made it completely open. So you can decide the states, you can decide the point events that you want to consider in your study. You decide your own keys, you decide the codes, and you can also add a description for those, including importing that particular ethogram from a spreadsheet file or from another software. While doing this, let me unlock the idea that you can have an unlimited number of behaviors or of subjects connected with your project. Yes, because your code will be something that must be unique, but you can add more codes to the same keys. So this is what unlocks the fact that you may have an unlimited number of behaviors or an unlimited number of individuals. And you can also have behavioral categories, and you can use those behavioral categories to apply to different behaviors to have a multi-level view of your coding and the behavior of the project and the species or the situation you're working with. You can also set an exclusion matrix that will allow you to stop a behavior when another behavior starts. And I think that my time is gone, so I will jump very quickly to the end just by saying that you can also imagine to have multiple individuals in your video that you want to see all together, jumping one to another. It doesn't change a lot with what happens at the end, because everything is time locked with your media. And so this is going to be very easy to do. And with this, I think I can close, just reminding you that Boris is a part of a set of software that we put together to study behavior. And you can check everything on the page www.boris.unito.it. And thank you for listening, and get in touch if you need some help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. That was very informative and very interesting.
Thank you.
We are going to open the Q&A now. So if people have questions or comments for Marco, that would be great. You can use either the chat or the Q&A functions in Zoom. So please go ahead and ask something if you want. Otherwise, we can keep questions and comments for the very end of the event. So we'll.
So
Okay.
there's, oh yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Brianna. Yeah.
There's a question that popped up. Can you show an example of how the text output could look, what that could look like?
The text output, you mean when we export the text? I don't have this in the presentation, maybe, but this is, for example, the test you can export when you want to do the finished state machine. Okay, so this is the script that we can automatically generate, and you can use with Beatrix, which is a software that we have done, but also with many other software you have online that are dealing with the GraphViz language that is probably familiar to many of you. I don't have yeah, I can show you this. This is the list of the different ways you can export your coding into, which is a tabular events that is a sort of a spreadsheet that you can look in a spreadsheet kind of software like Excel or many others, or aggregated events, which is already sorted by occurrence in different individuals and in different observation. Behavioral sequences, this is also something you can do. You can export your coding as a Pratt text grid that you can process with Pratt, which is a common voice analysis software by the University of Amsterdam. And you can also, if you are very much in love with old software like JWatcher, you can also export for JWatcher or as a binary table. So for example, what you can do is to have a list of behavior that you put together and have 1, 0, 1, 0 at a particular time being. You decide your own with and this is something that, for example, we use when you want to model behavior or interaction across different individuals. So you can do something like that. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have the raw kind of view because I deleted the slide as I had a small time today, but I'm happy to provide if someone gets in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you also show what is underneath the analysis tab? Someone is asking to see what is possible there.
Underneath the analysis tab, you mean in the interface? Yeah.
Yes, please.
I'm going there in a second. Yes. So, for example, it can be something like this. Okay. So this is where your coding is going, the event log. Okay. So this is the time at which you recorded a particular event, the start of the event, the stop of the event, the subject, and these are shown very clearly near your media. You decide exactly where, if above or below, and you can see your focus subject at a particular time and the behavior at a particular time. And you can have it here, or you can undock it and put it on another screen if you prefer, or wherever you want. Here is your ethogram. You can use the keys on your keyboard, but I did not mention you can also click here if you prefer to, activate a particular behavior. The first click will be start. The second will be stop, and you can have subjects. You can use it in the same way below here. And if you have a media, you will have the player over here. I haven't mentioned that when you're using audio or when you want to use the audio that is connected with your video, you can also see the oscillogram or the spectrogram. So you can also have a view of the audio that is connected with the media you are working on. And this is something that for many people is very useful. And then with the kind of visualization that I showed before, we also introduce the fact that you can export as a text grid, so as an annotation of your audio file, your event log in a way that it makes very easy to cut all the different parts of the video when you work with Prat or other audio software, Audacity or others.
Great. Thank you. People are asking about frame-by-frame coding, wanting to know what it looks like, and if you can manually set the time scale, and maybe even how synchronization between the different inputs might look like, either within frame-by-frame or outside of frame-by-frame coding.
Yeah, you can activate a frame-by-frame by coming here on this kind of film icon. I hope you see my mouse on the screen. Over here, and this is the two arrows that you see here are those you can use to go backward or forward on your frame coding. And in this situation, you can also, in the new version of Boris, you also have the frame number together with the time subject code in your event log. So it's going to be there with you. And when you want to go back to another kind of visualization, like you want to get out of the frame by frame, you can also do that. And it doesn't change in terms of interface. The interface remains this one that you see over here, okay? And it records precisely the frame, and in the preference, you decide in the preferences, you decide which is the jump in terms of frame that you want to have when you play with these two arrows. Okay?
Great, thank you. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to have us move on to the next one, and then we can circle back to some of the conversation or the questions that are out there. So
Thank you so much. I'm stopping my sharing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Marco. That was very, very interesting. And now we are going to learn about another very interesting piece of software, which is Datavyu. And to do that, we have Kasey Soska, who's going to present about Datavyu. Kasey, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. Can you see and hear okay?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. So I'm Kasey Soska. I'm a research support specialist with Datavyu, and I'm going to give you an idea of how Datavyu can help you discover more from your video data. So I'll talk about the benefits of using Datavyu, share a little bit about the Datavyu playback components and setting up coding spreadsheets, and give you some examples of automating tasks in Datavyu using Datavyu scripting options. And the goal here is to get familiar with general functions so you can see if it fits your research needs. So why use Datavyu? Datavyu is software that is designed by perceptual motor researchers to streamline perceptual motor actions, because every coding action is a perceptual motor action. So Datavyu is designed to make coding movements fast and efficient. Datavyu links each coded event in a spreadsheet directly to the place in the video. So that means it's always easy to jump back to previously coded events to vet them, check reliability, or find examples for talks, or to set up additional codes based off of previous coding passes. Datavyu is agnostic about what you want to code, how you want to code it, the conventions that you're going to use, whether you're going to use a single letter code, multiple letter codes, multiple different codes, full transcription, comments, anything is possible. Datavyu software can adapt to your own needs. And Datavyu has a scripting language and built-in programming interface that is completely flexible. This supports import and export in any data format that you'd like to use, as well as automation of any repeated tasks like checking for typos or doing iterator reliability. Important, like all the other software we're going to be talking about today, Datavyu is free and it is open source. Everything about it is free. The software is free. The support is free. And Datavyu runs on both Mac and PC. And there's a 30-year history where Datavyu is designed by researchers for researchers. You can download Datavyu right now by going to datavyu.org. Please note the spelling of Datavyu. If you want support, whether that's hands-on training with your lab, help getting started, technical troubleshooting, we offer free support directly with behavioral researchers at NYU. And we also have user guides on the website that include installation guides, best practices, as well as walkthrough videos. These include tutorials of Datavyu basics, how to use timestamps, designing codes in Datavyu, as well as videos of coders using Datavyu. For example, here's a transcriber that is working in real time in Datavyu, so you can see how they're using the software, and importantly, for doing efficient coding, where are their hands? How are they moving them? How are they not moving them? Where are they optimizing their finger movements? So I want to show you what Datavyu looks like and how you control video playback. When you set up Datavyu, you'll see three things. These are the three Datavyu components, and they can be moved around the screen or across a second monitor. You attach the video that you've collected, and the media displayer displays this video or multiple videos that can be synchronized together. There's a controller, which is a little bar that shows you the time of playback. It allows you to navigate and scrub through the video. And a spreadsheet where you actually enter the data and you define what you want to code. You can have different columns and as many columns as you need for whatever behaviors you want to code. Control of the media player is done using the numpad on a standard keyboard or a USB numpad. And the buttons on the numpad correspond to different actions. So right above that numpad is the time of the current playback of the video in this little box. Red is in hours, green is minutes, blue seconds, gray is milliseconds, and right next to that is the speed you're currently playing the video back at. And we use a numpad rather than a mouse because this means fewer hand movements. The left hand is anchored onto the keyboard for entering codes or comments or transcription. The right hand sits on the numpad to control playback of the video. So the green keys on the numpad are what let you move through the video, playing, pausing, jogging, and shuttling at different speeds. And the blue keys are used to label onset and offset times. And I'll talk about that in the next section. Let's focus on the green keys right now. So 8 plays the video back at 1 time speed, whatever is real time for that video, and 5 stops video playback. The 4 and the 6 keys shuttle video playback. 6 allows you to select forward playback speeds from very fast to very, very, very slow. These can be done on the fly with a simple button press. Half speed is really useful for finding event onsets, and fast forward allows you to scrub through parts of the video, maybe where there's no events of interest, or if you're coding a behavior that is rare or lengthy. The 4 key allows you to select backward playback in reverse at various speeds. And these keys allow you to adapt different coding strategies to different behaviors or change on the fly during playback of a single video, slowing down when you need to carefully vet event timing and speeding up to skip irrelevant parts of the video. The 1 and 3 keys jog the video 1 frame at a time, 1 frame forward with the 3 key, 1 frame backward with the 1 key, and this allows precise frame-by-frame coding of onsets and offsets. Frame rate is automatically detected, but you also have an option to set it yourself. And the minus key jumps the video back by the number of seconds that you specify. So for instance, you could jump back 2 seconds to repeatedly play an event several times to decide between codes or transcribe an utterance. I want to show you how easy it is to move through a video with minimal hand movements and no mousing. On the left-hand side is a video of a mom and baby playing, and on the right is the keypad controlling playback. What I want you to get from the video of the hand is how little hand movement is required, and from the video of the baby, how much control over video playback. So we're going to start hitting the 8 key, playing it at normal speed. And then we decide we're going to do a couple of taps of the 6 key to fast forward this, because now I want to find the exact frame where this child is going to go up this little steps on the other side. We can slow down the video. And now we're jogging forward with the 1 and 3 keys because we want to find the frame where her little foot just touches the steps. Now we found that. We're going to fast forward because we want to get to where she goes down the slide on the other side. So we've used the 6 key again. We hit 8 to go back to real time, and we're going to watch her go down the slide. We press minus, can play that again to see what her descent strategy was. We can use the 4 key to reverse it and play it backward. This is really useful for finding the latency. So when did an event of interest start? And then we can always continue to fast forward, so that way we could jog through several seconds of the video, maybe to get to the end of a particular task. Next, I'm going to show you how to set up for behavioral coding with columns and cells in a coding spreadsheet. You define what you want to code, and you can have different columns to capture different behaviors, aspects of behavior, different people, whatever you need. Time on this spreadsheet runs from top to bottom. And within each column, you have cells for the different events. This example spreadsheet, the researcher is interested in time locking and transcribing the mother and child into 2 columns. So this is the child's language, this is the mom's language, and each cell is something she says. So first she says, then a few seconds later, just pretend though, and then not really eat. The spreadsheet menu is where all of the action for designing the spreadsheet is. We're going to set up 3 columns for a study about problem solving. I'm going to show you an example using a mix of letter coding and transcription, but remember, you can set up any code you want in Datavyu. So we're going up to the spreadsheet column, selecting our code editor, and we're going to add a new column. The first is we might want to enter some information about the study itself. The name of the study, we definitely want to have the participant's ID. And here we're going to also add information about the test date and the participant's birth date, as well as their sex. Next, we're going to add a column for which task the child is doing at each time in the video. And finally, we're going to add in a column where we're going to transcribe, and we're going to have codes for the source of the utterance, as well as the content of what was said. Here's a spreadsheet cell from this example. We have 2 code prompts in brackets that are separated by a comma. The first is the source, and we're going to code whether the speaker was M for mom or C for the child. And then we're also going to have the content of the utterance. You can have as many code prompts as you want and as many associated codes as you need. After the utterances are coded and transcribed, your cells might look something like this. The first utterance is by the mom with an M, the second by the child with a C. The mom is saying, "Bye-bye, fire truck," and about 3.5 seconds later, the child is saying, "Bye-bye." There are 4 parts to a cell. In the top left corner of each cell is the ordinal. Cells are numbered sequentially running down that column. Datavyu gives you this automatically. When you insert a new cell at the bottom, you get the next number. If you scroll up, insert it earlier, Datavyu adjusts the ordinals. And Datavyu gives you 2 times in each cell. You can use that to link the event to the video. The first is typically used as an onset. When did the event begin? And the second is usually the offset. You can choose this to be any time you want. Coders mark this separately from the onset. Or if your research question doesn't care about event duration, you just need to know when and the number of times that something happened, you can make the onset and offset equal with a single button press. Anytime on the video when a behavior of interest is not occurring and a coder doesn't mark an event, you get this gray space between cells. Here's the numpad I showed you before. And with the blue keys, we're going to use these to insert cells and mark our onsets and offsets. So whether you are inserting a cell, setting an onset and offset, it does it whatever time is displayed on the controller. This can be while the video is actively being played back or stopped. Whenever you're inserting the cell, you can press enter. This creates a new cell, sets an onset time to the controller, but leaves the offset blank to be marked later. The equal key makes a point cell where the onset and offset are equal. The 7 key adjusts the onset of the cell, so if you need to fix the onset after you already created it. And the 9 and period keys set the offset of the cell. They do the same thing because if your fingers are using 4 and 6 to shuttle, 9 is closer. 1 and 3 to go frame by frame, period is closer. Every keystroke matters. Once you have your timestamp entered, anytime you select that cell, the onset is pulled into this little box on the left, and if you hit the plus key, the video jumps right to that time. So on the left, I'm showing part of a Datavyu spreadsheet with mother and child speech, as well as some accompanying time-locked codes on child language that were inserted by a script. These are about the type of child's vocalization, whether they babbled or not, and the function of the mom's speech. Is she directing the action, providing information? And on the right is the video of the mom and baby along with the controller. So green, I'm highlighting each utterance by the mom or baby, and I'm zooming in to the transcript and time-locked codes so you can see each utterance of the mom and baby is synced to the video. The associated codes of the mom and baby language are linked to the transcript.
Under the bed?
Baby's talking about a pumpkin, we're calling it a cookie.
Pumpkin. Cookie.
But the mom is saying, no, that's a pumpkin, not a cookie. This language coding is actually part of a much larger coding spreadsheet for this particular project. In this case, each column was coded in Datavyu in the same spreadsheet and represents a different type of behavior for the baby and for the mom. We have cell highlighting enabled, so you can call attention to each of the time lock cells. White haven't happened yet, green is happening right now, and red already passed. And this is really useful, so you can see how behaviors in every domain can be coded on the same spreadsheet to see how quickly they change from one to another, how multiple behaviors can overlap across domains, and how behaviors of the mom and the baby occur relative to one another. Datavyu uses a standard scripting language, Ruby, to do its automation and scripting. And most developmental researchers are not programmers, but I promise you, most researchers and even undergraduates can learn to write Ruby scripts. We have an in-depth guide on how to write and use scripts. There's a built-in library for doing some basic functions. And we have a whole repository on our website that takes you to a GitHub page with folders for various example scripts. Once a script is written, you can load it into your favorites folder in the bottom left corner. They show up here. And so now you can click on this. This is one where it's going to check for typos in this transcript. So each one of these little lines here is showing a violation based off of what the researcher has set. They're finding this up. This researcher put a number instead of a letter code. Or it can even search for improbable values. In this case, this column is saying, oh, this child said we don't play hockey with that now. That's probably not a child. That's probably the mom. We can go ahead and fix that utterance. And you can use scripts to assess inter-observer reliability. You can do reliability on a certain number of events or a percentage of time for each session or a number of sessions. You can assess agreement on number of frames, events, or individual bouts. You can flag disagreements with custom tolerance levels, and you can give quick statistics like percent agreement or kappa. You can do this on one spreadsheet or across an entire study. We have a library of existing reliability scripts that do all of these things, or we will help you write a custom one to do whatever you need. Once one column is checked and reliable, you can use this to speed up later coding or analysis. So in this example, we're searching the mother's speech events for math terms. We're going up to our scripting menu, we're running a script, and now it's going to select every cell that contains a word that we have put on our list. It returns them, generates a new column, and so a coder can now go through every one of those math words that's linked in time to a previous code, linked in time to the spreadsheet, and I'm zooming in so you can see that the coder can jump to each one of these cells and watch the video. They don't need to play the whole video back again. They can jump to each one of these events. You can write a script to find turn-taking events, for instance, in this case where the mom or child respond to each other within 3 seconds. We run a script here that creates a new column. It's now looking for overlap between mom and baby, and each one of these red lines means that the mom and baby overlaps, and the script automatically inserts codes for whoever was leading or following. You can write a script to import any text or spreadsheet format. For instance, importing Whisper speech to text, fixing it and checking in Datavyu, and doing additional follow-up codes. We have a repository of scripts to import things like eye tracking, physiological data from EEG or motion tracking, Zoom transcripts, automatic speech recognition, and we have scripts that allow you to easily export Datavyu into any spreadsheet format. Here, the researcher wants to share their data with CLAN to do type and token analysis. So Datavyu is prompting where you'd like to save it. The script is finished running. Now this file is on the desktop, they can open it up, and all of their transcription and coding from Datavyu is now in CLAN format. So I encourage you to head to datavyu.org to learn more, read the user guide, watch the walkthrough videos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kasey. That was a very helpful overview of Datavyu. And now we're going to open the floor for questions and comments. And Brianna, you can go ahead with that if you want.
Yeah, so the first question we have is about using the Ruby scripts. And it is asking, when using the Ruby scripts to export data from Datavyu, the person knows there's example scripts on GitHub, but they can be a little bit difficult to transfer to own code. So do you provide any sort of support with the scripting aspect of using Datavyu and kind of specifically with exporting?
Yes, absolutely. So there, if you click on support on the tab on the Datavyu home screen, it brings you to a Google form. You can fill out, say what your needs are. You can upload some scripts you might have tried or a couple of your already coded spreadsheets. We will write it for you. We'll meet with you over Zoom. We'll walk through. If it's not doing the right thing, we'll fix it. And the goal is so that way we can set you up with something that looks familiar to you. Because how everyone wants to analyze it, what software they want to use, at what level do you want every single frame? Do you want every event? Do you want a summary across tasks? We can do that for you. We're happy to meet and do that.
Great. And then is it possible to import the same codes or spreadsheets for different videos? Or do we have to set up the spreadsheet template manually every time? And can you
Yes.
actually explain what that flow process might be like?
Yeah, so there's really two ways to set up a template. One is doing what I did, where you go into that code editor and you manually click the GUI and set up the files. Typically, what we recommend people doing is you have the names of your columns, you have the names of your code names, and you save that out and you call it my project _ template or whatever. And then anytime you want to code using those same columns and same names, you just open that up. Or you can write a Ruby script that will generate that for a single file across multiple files. If you already have a spreadsheet that has a bunch of demographic information, test dates, birth dates, you can use that to script it and generate multiple Datavyu files. In short, however you want to create spreadsheets, we can come up with ways to do that for you, or you can do it with the GUI, but no, you do not have to do it from scratch each time.
Great. And then I wonder if you could say a little bit about inter-rater reliability and how that works with Datavyu.
Yeah. So again, we have a couple of built-in functions for doing some basic things, like if you're doing event coding and we have the same onset, did we mark the same code? That's really, really easy to do under the hood, but we've written tons and tons of custom scripts to do Datavyu coding. So if you're marking out onsets and offsets, we can write a script to help you do % of overlap of frames. So out of the 10 minutes, how much time did we agree on the same codes? We've done it where you can even say, like, I have these single timestamp events, like this gesture and another gesture. Did we agree within 1 second, half a second, 2 seconds? Bind those events, say what they matched or they didn't. And we can return some basic statistics in Datavyu. We can give you a kappa table on % agreement or % of frame agreement, but we also have tons of scripts to export out into MATLAB to do more sophisticated analysis, or R or SPSS. So we have some under the hood stuff to do for like % of frame agreement, % of event agreement pretty easily within Datavyu and get those kappa numbers.
Are the kappa numbers, the tables, something that you get from the Datavyu interface, or is that something you have to run the Ruby scripts to get?
That's something you have to run the Ruby scripts to get. Yeah, there's not really kind of a click button, which, it's sort of an advantage and a disadvantage. It's not easy to do, but it's incredibly flexible and adaptable to literally whatever you want to do. And we've pretty much written lots and lots of these examples. So we've not encountered something totally out of our wheelhouse yet, but how do we adapt it to your codes? We can usually get you back something within a couple of days.
That sounds like a good challenge to throw something completely out of your.
Please do it. Oh, we'd love it. I loved it. I mean, that's like one, I love figuring out how to give reliability numbers.
Amazing. And then you've mentioned there's a lot of resources available. I wonder if it would be possible, I don't know if you have this plan, to just show people kind of the Ruby scripts and where you access that and what that flow might look like, since that's such an integral part of using Datavyu.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the main thing is we do have this scripting repository. So if you click on scripts, we have kind of we have everything sort of separated in here into different folders for importing, exporting. Honestly, I would say the best way to learn this is you put in a support ticket to us, say, I'm interested in doing an export into this format. I'm interested in importing to this format. Because there are different ways that you might want to write a script, and the level of analysis that you want to do might not be the same thing. So what I've typically done is, hey, I know this other person coded long event durations. Do I have something in the scripting repository? Did I do something previously? I can fork and adapt that. Or this is totally novel. I've never done something like this before. I submit like a support ticket to Datavyu myself, and one of my colleagues can help me out with something like that. So we do have this repository that really has a lot of basic things. I think things like editing or checking in the first two are really easy ways to learn Datavyu scripting. Checking being things like, I just want to know, like for this particular code, I can do R for rotate, T for touch, or H for hold. I only want those letters, everything else flag it as an error. That's a pretty easy script to write. And we have an example of that right in that check script there. And it brings it up there. But I will say there is, you do need to learn a little bit of Ruby, but it is not hard once you've seen an example from your own spreadsheet. Seeing an example from someone else's may or may not be helpful. From your own, you get it right away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think we're going to move on to the next presenter. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Kasey. So next up is Elan, and we are very happy to welcome Divya Kanekal Han Sloetjes to teach us more about it. So Divya, you're welcome to share your screen. Okay, we can see your presentation now. Thank you.
Hello, do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. I am Divya. I'll be taking you through the introduction to Elan, and my colleague Han will be taking up the Q&A. Yeah, let's get started. General overview of Elan. Elan is a standalone Java application for manual annotation of audio and video recordings. It supports multi-tier, multi-participant, time-linked annotations of audio and video recordings. And it produces XML files. The format of XML files is called EAF with .eaf extension. And it is available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And Elan is open source. It's free and no registration required. And the current version of Elan is 6.8. You can download the current version and the previous versions at website archive.mpi.nl. Yeah. Short history of Elan. Elan was developed since 2000. It was mainly funded by MPI, and it was developed at MPI, Max Planck Institute of Psycholinguistics, in Nijmegen, Netherlands. And it's also funded by several other projects, Udico, Dobes, Clarin, and Claria. Coming to user communities, Elan is applied in several fields of research, but mainly language documentation, language acquisition and development, sign language research, gesture research, multimodality research, behavioral studies, psychology, psychiatry. Basically, Elan can be used by anyone who wants to annotate audio-video corpora. This is the main Elan window. Here you can see a video player. You can add multiple videos, synchronized videos. And you see a spectrogram viewer, which displays the spectrum of frequencies, and a waveform, which displays audio signals. And below that, you see a timeline viewer where you see annotations. And all these annotations are inside tiers. Elan allows you to create, edit, visualize annotations for audio and video data. Elan supports display of speech signals together with their annotations, like how we saw in the previous screenshot. It supports unlimited number of annotation tiers as defined by the users, and the linking of annotations to other annotations via tier hierarchy. It supports several import and export formats and search options. What are Elan annotations and tiers? Annotation is basically a Unicode text with 2 timestamps, a begin and end time, and an annotation value. An annotation can have a parent annotation, and annotations are always assigned to a tier. What are tiers? They are layers or containers for annotations. They can be part of tier hierarchy. Like a tier can have a parent tier and can have multiple dependent tiers. And tier types. Tier types are containers for tier properties like stereotype, control vocabulary, and lexicon link. We'll know more about stereotype in the next videos. Control vocabularies, they are set of categories, codes, or predefined values for the annotation values. Elan supports defining of control vocabularies within itself, but it also supports the import of external control vocabularies as well. Yeah. Tier hierarchies. So we have Elan facilitates 4 kind of inter-tier relations. They are time subdivision, symbolic subdivision, included in, and symbolic association. Time subdivision is dependent tier, can be time aligned. It's a time aligned subdivision of a parent interval with no gaps. And symbolic subdivision is ordered symbolic subdivision of a parent interval. Included in is time aligned subdivision of parent, and it can have gaps. And symbolic association is one-to-one association with a parent annotation. We have several working modes in Elan called annotation mode, segmentation mode, transcription mode, and interlinearization mode. Annotation mode is the generic and default mode of working with annotations, where you can drag your mouse and create the annotation with a begin and end time. It's basically used to visualize the annotations. And segmentation mode is designed for rapid development of creation of segments only. So unlike annotation mode, here we create annotations with the enter key. Usually annotators create all the segments at once in the segmentation mode and come back to annotation and create annotations. Transcription mode. Transcription mode is designed to increase the speed and efficiency of transcription work. It's basically keyboard driven. Here you listen to a segment and type, listen and type. And interlinearization mode is text mode, where there is a parsing and glossing of text into interlinearization texts with the help of analyzers. Recognizers. Annotation in Elan is basically manual by default, but it also offers few automatic annotation creation with the help of recognizers, text analyzers, and web services. Audio video recognizers mostly create segmentations based on speech, non-speech, that is with the silence recognizer, automatic speak recognition, short boundary detection, and forced alignment. Some of the recognizers run locally, and some run online, and some with the extension. You can add new recognizers to Elan based on the Elan Recognizer API. Elan supports multiple file processing. It supports creation of many EAF files based on a series of recordings. You can do changing of tier and tier types for a set of files. Tier-based operations like overlaps, subtraction, merging of annotations for multiple files. And you can do find and replace, structured search, and it supports import from toolbox, path, flex, and export to toolbox, path, flex, word list, tab limited, etc. Yeah, coming to data analysis, Elan basically supports qualitative analysis, but it also supports some of quantitative analysis like statistics, where you can generate and export basic statistics of tiers and annotations. N-gram analysis, that is generate and export custom n-grams of annotations. It supports structured search, inter-writer reliability calculation, annotation overlap and gaps information, etc. Yeah, and this is the overview of interoperability or data transfer between Elan and other tools. Yeah, that was it. Thank you for listening. Any questions will be addressed by Han. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Divya. That was very helpful. And now I will hand things over to Brianna to handle any questions that there might be. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to use the Q&A function to let us know.
Thank you so much. So I think one of the first questions I had was about your recognizers. So does that, so is my understanding is that that might allow for automatic transcriptions. Is that accurate? Or what do your recognizers do for in Elan?
Yes, yes, that's true. So recognizers are software pieces that automatically detect events in audio or video. So maybe it was visible in the screenshot that we have a connection to a Whisper if that's installed on your computer. WebMouse there's some forced alignment of text to speech and automatic silence, non-silence recognition, that kind of things that can help to improve the speed of transcription, of segmentation and transcription. Yes, automatic speech recognition, that kind of things. Yeah.
That's great. And so is there documentation or resources somewhere on your website to help naive user kind of figure out what of the many tools that you can use to adapt Elan?
Well, there are a few that are sort of integrated, and there's a little documentation on how to build your own interfacing to a recognizer, or yeah, if you have some recognizer or some software that you would like to integrate, and there's some documentation of how to do that. It's not extensive, so you probably need some help from us. We'd like to support people who try to extend the possibilities of Elan with recognizers.
Great. And in general, if someone was interested in using Elan and they needed help with troubleshooting, things like that.
Yeah, we have a forum and we have an email address, so we'd like to help people as much as possible. We're a small team, but we like to help people when they run into problems, and yeah.
Wonderful. Someone is asking whether you could go over how to calculate inter-rater reliability across EAF files in Elan.
Yes, so in Elan we have a few algorithms built in. One is called a modified kappa, and one based on Fly's algorithm, and also something called staccato. These are external algorithms. What you normally do is select a folder where you have the files, and then the matching is based on some system that you have in the file naming, based on suffixes or prefixes, so that Elan can determine which files belong together, let's say, are on the same recording, and then by different by different raters, and then you can select which tiers to compare, and then run the algorithm. The modified kappa allows you to specify the amount of overlap that annotations need to have in order to treat them as a match, and then look to the code that has been used to see if the raters agree on that coding. So yeah, kappa normally is based on two raters seeing the same set of events, whatever it is. But since in most cases in the projects that we know of, different annotators also create the segmentation. So and that makes it more complicated than if you have one segmentation and you have two or more raters apply codes to the already pre-segmented recording. So that's why we have this so-called modified kappa based on a paper by Holle and Rijn, which tries to do two things actually, to match based on the segmentation and also based on the coding.
Thank you. Someone is asking about possible discrepancies between using Elan for Windows and Mac OS using MP4 format videos. So they've noticed.
Well, yeah, so
don't show in the
a bit
same
of
kind of-
background, yeah, bit of background on that. So Elan is written in Java programming language, and we try to integrate platform-specific media players. Java for a long time didn't really have an own media framework, and then there was something else, Java FX, which we also integrate. But the best performance we see if Elan can use the native media framework of the platform. So on Windows it's the Microsoft Media Foundation, and on Mac it's Audio Video Foundation by Apple. And yes, so there can be differences in how they treat and interpret media files. I'm not sure if this will likely or easily result in differences in segmentation if you do it on Windows or Mac. Although, yeah, there are a few cases where if annotations have been created frame precise, that if you move from one machine from one platform to another, that it's one frame off, so yeah, there are sometimes issues, but in general, especially if the segmentation is not so critical that it has to be frame precise, then I think in principle there's no problem. And MP4, if you have a sort of cross-platform media format, then it can be used on Windows or Mac or Linux.
Great.
If that was the question.
Yeah, and I think that they had a follow-up question about if using a format that's not MP4, different than MP4 format, might that help?
Sorry?
If they used a format that was not just MP4s, would that be helpful?
Yeah, so it depends. MP4, I think, is now one of the most common formats, I guess, that's being used cross-platform. And I see that a lot of Mac users like to use MOV, and then you can have a problem if you move to Windows. And also on Windows there are formats that are not so easy to transfer to Mac or to Linux. So it's nice if a community agrees on format and also on encoding, actually, so that that it is that's the best way to make it possible to transfer data from one platform to another and to collaborate with people on different platforms.
Thank you. And then another person is asking whether it's possible to modify the value of a comment in Elan across different files. So can you change the value of a comment to another value in annotations from different files?
Yes, there are a few options to have a kind of search and replace in multiple files, and if the coding was based on controlled vocabularies, there are also ways to update multiple files with changes in the controlled vocabularies. You can use template files just like in some of the other tools that have been mentioned, and if you started and need more tiers, for instance, then you can also update a complete set of files with new information in the templates. So that kind of operations are available. Most of those things, or yeah, actually all of those things are available via the user interface, so that we don't really have a scripting language or so. So if we provide some functionality, then it's usually via user interface. And there's also with the search, we can also do the search and detect things based on overlap, and maybe create new annotations based on overlap or gaps and that kind of things. But in Elan, that's usually via user interface and windows where you can specify what you like to do or what you like to find.
Wonderful. I think at this time we'll kind of broaden up our conversation and open up the floor to, you're welcome. Thank you so much for the presentation. If anyone has any questions for all three of these or any combination of three, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I have kind of a wide question I want to offer to any of you all. So you are all open source products that rely on, you're trying to meet the community. And I'm curious how you, one, if there are any upcoming features that you are working on that you would like to highlight. And two, if any users have any features that they would like to see implemented in your products, if there's an avenue for the community to give you feedback for helping to build each of your products as it moves forward.
I'll jump in and say one of the features that we have often gotten requested for, and there's very limited funding for getting, open source programmers, programming, like building those sorts of things up. So it has to come as part of other projects. But one of the things that we're often asked for, and if someone is interested in this, is visualizing audio streams from video, because that's really useful for being able to set precise onsets and offsets. That is not something we have in Datavyu right now. I know that, they're like, there's a way to do it. I know Elan has ways of doing that. So we have many people that will do things in Elan and then jump to Datavyu into Elan. It'd be wonderful if someone had a way to kind of merge some of those facets and make some of those things. But I know that's something we've often gotten asked about that works really well in Elan, and we'd love if we don't know how to make them work, but we know we can.
I will mention that, and thanks for the question. I will mention that I haven't mentioned before that we can have in Boris external data input. So for example, if you have hormone dosage or you have earth rate measurement, or if you have any kind of external measurement that you want to put in together with your videos or your media, like we had a very nice example in papers published with salinity or depth meters information, and now we are working on setting the chance to have 3D accelerometers input together with the videos. So while you're screening the video, you might have also the information coming from accelerometers that are, joined during your observation, and you can export them, of course, also jointly. So that's what we are working at the moment. And of course, we are also working at the fact to have a new macOS version that now is posted from a little while. And I'm a Mac user, so I know the story.
Yes. Yes. the support for the spectrogram is quite recent in Elan, and we like to extend that a bit more. So if possible, like calculating pitch and that kind of things. Part of the Elan users are also using Praat, and for many people it's fine to switch between Elan and Praat. But some would like to have some functionality inside one tool, and we would like to look into that. Indeed, also, as Kasey mentioned, we recently added extraction of audio samples from video. That was quite a bit of work implementing native, so-called native code and integrating it in our Java code. Yeah, we have a long list of things that people would like. We didn't mention the visualization of time series data, and that can be, the source of that can be anything. And we probably would like and will maybe extend that, and 3D visualization has also been mentioned and requested. If people have 3D information via motion trackers or via multiple video cameras, that 3D can be visualized alongside the videos. Gesture research is also one main group of users, and their things are moving a lot too, also in terms of automatic detection of events, and so that kind of integration of that kind of things, and new visualizations of that. That's some things that come to mind that we would like to do in the near future. And
Thank you. Kayla B has a question. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question specifically is for Datavyu. So my lab, we use Datavyu, and essentially we're just trying to code infants in them looking at certain toys. So I know I asked a question earlier about having like an automatic or manual, have to either manually create a spreadsheet every time or just creating one. And I know you say using scripts for it, but specifically for coding, like for example, we have like 6 different objects that the babies are like going to be looking at, like all of them going to be looking at for all of our participants. So like for example, like a red duck or something. Is it a possibility like, so we have like look as on the spreadsheet as like a column, and like the individual codes, we were wondering, can that be like automatically put in, like a certain key could be pressed or something? I know like Boris has a similar structure with that, and I was wondering if Datavyu could have something with that, or if there's a script we have to make.
So it depends how you've set up your, I mean, in short, you can put whatever letter you want as your code. And so if you've called your coding column look and your code name is target, for, yeah, that's the name of your code, your options can be R for red duck, or you could write out red duck, or you could have it be D for duck, or 1 for object 1. As long as you're standardizing what you're doing, Datavyu doesn't really care or know that you have something different. There is an option to do what we call quick key mode, which is like a not as good version of what Boris does, where you can have like the touch screen, but it basically, you can have the video playing, you can hit the R key for red duck, and every time you press the R key, it makes a cell in that column look at the time that you've pressed R. It's essentially like pausing the video, inserting a cell, and inserting the code at the same time. So you can do that quick key mode in there. But really, there's not a way to set up like an automated way of doing it like in Boris, but there are ways that you can sort of set it up to efficiently do that. If you're finding it's kind of arduous, or you're not remembering the codes, or it's inconsistent, let us know and we can take a look at your spreadsheet, and maybe there's a way that we can regularize things or get it into a more streamlined, efficient way to do it. But I've coded exactly something like that. I know it's possible. It's just getting your coding strategy down.
Thank you so much.
There's a question in Q&A about Elan's integrator reliability again. Wondering if there's any additional resources beyond the manual to help them understand how to calculate the modified Cohen's kappa.
Yes, we actually refer to the paper of Hall and Rijn for explanation of what the algorithm does. And apart from that, we try to explain how to apply it in Elan. It requires several steps, selecting files and telling Elan how to match files and how to match tiers, and then the calculation after that is performed the way the MATLAB implementation by Rijn performs, and it gets some output. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's so. Apart from that, we don't really have a lot of documentation on that. So for the theoretical part of it, we usually refer to the Hall and Rijn paper, which quite explains it quite well, I think, and also mentions maybe the problematic side of it, applying kappa for time-based annotations, which people need to be aware of, especially if you report values on a conference or so, or in a paper. I think you need to be aware of what happens and understand what the difference is with the kappa that many researchers might be familiar with, and that there is a distinction because of the fact that the time alignment can play a role.
Great. Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in quickly and say too that Roger Bakeman has some related papers with his GSeek software it's a different implementation, different algorithms, but conceptually is in that sort of same space. So if you need to think about those kappas, modified kappas, what to do on non-event matches, that's a good primer as well.
Yeah, that's good to mention. Maybe you can add that to the chat too, Kasey. That's
Yeah, please, if you can, put that in the chat, because I think a lot of people are struggling with this
yeah.
across all of the different softwares. It's not specific to a software, actually. It's very much kind of how do we interpret these things as behavioral coders, right? Yeah, thank you all for it. I wonder if you wouldn't want to say just a final kind of overview or highlight or sentence or two about each of your products, kind of what is the strength, or where can or should people go if they want to test it out and get into using your product. If there's anything final point you want people to take away about each of your different softwares.
Yeah, let me start with that. So I just want to say we tried to put together a piece of software that was satisfying our needs, and we found that for many others it was very useful. I'm very happy with that. Just to make a point on the last thing we were discussing, we also have to remember that something at least we were thinking about is you can export your data and doing whatever you want in terms of statistic test in R or SPSS or whatever you want to do. And this is, in my opinion, also part of making things usable for many. And I think that this is the same for all of us. So I cannot imagine to put everything in a piece of software that will satisfy everybody. I think that the role that we can play as an open source kind of open community is to have things that can be exported to be tested in the thorough way wherever we can test them, and that's the feeling I have when we try to develop things for Boris. But I'm pretty sure it's the same for the others. And thank you, and I will stop here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kasey.
Yeah, just echoing what Marco said. If you need to, there are statistics softwares that do statistics really well. There are visualization softwares that do visualizations really well. Please take advantage of those. And there are many behavioral tools that do some of those things. Datavyu does not do any visualization other than what is in the spreadsheet. It does only analyses that you can custom write. So that means there's a pretty steep learning curve in Datavyu, but it is incredibly flexible. But I will say, go to the tools that people have made that do the things that you want to do. For Datavyu, the thing that I know it does really well is it is very fast. It is an efficient way if you're going to be doing a repeatable task on a video. You know, it's hard to do stuff live, but if you're playing back a video, Datavyu is really, really fast. The keystrokes are fast. You can get out data very quickly from it. So if that is the use case that you want, great. But then if you want to do cool visualizations, you want to do lots of other things, I'm sure you can export out from Datavyu into Boris, you can export Datavyu into Elan, back and forth, use the tools that fit your needs.
And Han.
Yeah, so I agree with the previous speakers. So import and export is important. I don't really have final words. As the presentation showed, we have a quite diverse community. So Elan is used in very different disciplines, and that is also visible in the functionalities that are there. There are some things that are typical maybe for linguists or for documentary linguists, and things in it that are instigated by or asked for by sign language researchers, and there are multimodal language or multimodal interaction researchers that have given their input, and there's a lot of overlap between those disciplines and what they need in terms of functionality. But so it's a quite generic tool that we created and that has evolved over years, which has advantages, but maybe also can have the disadvantage that for your specific needs and for your discipline, there are better tools that are more focused or more geared towards what you need for your research. So I think it has advantages and disadvantages to have a generic tool, but I think we'll continue in adding functionality that can benefit multiple user groups and multiple disciplines, and integrating automatic annotation algorithms that will probably be an important line of developments, because many users have the problem of time and the amount of time that it takes to annotate recordings. So thank you all for inviting us also.
Great. I'm going to toss it back to Nico for some final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Brianna. I'm just going to wrap things up. Thank you very much to all four speakers. This was a fascinating overview, and I think all presentations were really successful in communicating the possibilities of each piece of software. I feel that we've learned a great deal today, and I'm sure we will all keep a close watch on any new developments. And after the webinar, please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions or thoughts, as always. And a big thank you to everybody for joining us today. We hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you so much again, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.